Florida's political trash, not policy talent. That's what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called Attorney General Pam Bondi live on national television, brushing her off like she was inconsequential. But what AOC didn't anticipate was how Bondi would walk onto that stage armed with GAO reports legal binders and the implacable poise of a seasoned prosecutor. While AOC chased applause, Bondi delivered indictments, and by the end, it wasn't AOC's voice echoing through the country, it was the chilling weight of Bondi's silence. The CNN debate studio felt charged even before cameras rolled. Producers with headsets hustled staffers, whispered like soldiers prepping for battle. The walls themselves seemed to hum with tension behind the curtain. Where candidates waited, civility had already evaporated. The air conditioner droned on, but did nothing to cut to the static. OC stood before a lit vanity, her reflection magazine. Perfect, her team fussed over every detail. Mic check, lint brush lapel. Pin, she looked ready, not in the calm before a storm sense, but more like someone tasting blood. She smirked, tugged her blazer cuff, then let her voice carry across the room. Without invitation. Why is she even here? Seriously, no one answered. She raised her voice again, calling Bondi Florida's political trash. If she wanted to spar with fossil fuel apologists, she'd go to a BP board meeting. One aide glanced nervously at the ceiling mic, cautioning her that it might be hot. AOC laughed loud and deliberate. Good, let America hear it. She wanted the country to know exactly what this night was. She came to bury fossil fuel politics, and that meant Bondi was collateral damage. So be it the room fell awkwardly silent, but Elsie wasn't finished tossing a sneer at the door. She muttered, people like her are the problem, smiles, heels, and zero moral spine. She's not a leader, she's a leftover, and in walked that leftover. Bondi said nothing, didn't flinch, didn't twitch, and in that void something lethal coiled, because when a prosecutor stays silent, it usually means she's loading something bigger. Bondi took her seat, opened her notebook, calmly flipped through climate impact assessments, Joe, audits, federal funding charts, nothing flashy, just receipts. Louder now, OC scoff, hearing all, but yet having no rebuttal. What are you saving for Fox News? Still, Bondi remained focused, her pen sliding across the page, while AOC ridiculed her for needing flash cards to survive stage time. That unbroken silence started to make the room uneasy, because silence with purpose isn't weakness. It's a warning. Anderson Cooper felt it too. The chill wasn't from the AC, but from the sense something was about to detonate. He leaned over to his producer and whispered, keep it tight, they're coming in hot. A young staffer walked in with a final prep list and nearly stopped cold by the crackling tension. Without a word exchanged, everyone understood the energy had already shifted, not because of what was about to be said on camera, but because of what had been said off it. And that's why Pam Bondi was dangerous. She didn't trend, she dismantled 3 minutes to air. Ilse confidence slipped her mic in place, her campaign manager grinning like they'd already won. Bondi closed her notebook, tucked her pen into the spine, and rose smoothly with the composure of someone who'd waited out a hurricane, then stepped into sunlight. 2 minutes later, he rolled her shoulders, whispered to herself. Bondi didn't whisper, didn't move, just adjusted her sleeve. 1 minute, then the cue, the camera's red light flared, the opening segment rolled, and under blinding studio lights, as millions tuned in to watch a debate on the planet's future, it was Bondi who stepped forward first, measured, not rushed, not dramatic, while AOC watched, realizing too late that the silence she mistook for cowardice was strategy. The audience leaned forward, because even before a word was spoken, it already felt like war. Anderson Cooper's voice cut through the buzz, introducing the topic. And the candidates first, AOC sharp in a red blazer hand near her mic, eyes glittering with anticipation. She gave a tight practice smile, barely glancing at Bondi. Then Cooper turned to Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, longtime prosecutor, master of navigating legal minefields. Bondi didn't blink, her face the same impenetrable mask she wore in courtrooms and closed-door hearings. Cooper invited AOC to begin. Critics say your plans are reckless. Why are you right about the Green New Deal, AOC? Didn't wait, she leaned forward, voice crisp, cutting, fully aware of the live broadcast, hoping we're not grading tonight on courtroom theatrics, because she came to talk policy, not play defense attorney for fossil fuels. It was a jab that cracked through the studio. The camera caught Bondi, giving the faintest restrained smile, like someone amused by a clumsy chest opening. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. She clicked her pen and began writing the soft sound. Absurdly loud in the hush, Elsie mistook the silence as an opening. She launched in proclaiming the Green New Deal wasn't fantasy. It was survival, job creation, moral courage. While homes flooded in the Bronx and wildfires torched California, people like Bondi nitpicked budgets. Instead of saving lives, a young crowd erupted. Bondi didn't blink. She flipped the page. OC pressed on her plan would build solar, wind, geothermal, while guaranteeing union jobs, and health care too ambitious was a lie. Pretending we could wait was what really cost lives. Cooper nodded, catching the crowd's fervor, but his eyes stayed on Bondi, who hadn't moved. He sensed what many missed. Bondi was anchoring, quietly ready to strike. Finally, he pivoted. Attorney General, your response. Bondi didn't step up to the mic. She didn't have it. She'd already commanded the room with stillness. She raised her head, looked straight into the camera, her voice, even her southern cadence, polished, but firm. She appreciated AOC's passion, didn't doubt her sincerity, but passion wasn't policy. It was performance, and that gentle distinction sliced through the air. Transitioning an economy required more than ambition. It demanded legal scaffolding, budgets, accountability. She let the word trillion hang as she outlined the Green New Deal's staggering costs, then moved through CBO projections, geo audits, economists' warnings about historic taxation or inflation. She flipped another page methodically. This was cross-examination live on television, and when she asked what happened to the oil rig worker, the trucking mechanic, when these promises failed her, skepticism dripped with cold cynicism. AOC jumped in, accusing Bondi of old fear tactics. Bondi didn't budge. She simply said what some call a relic, others call experience. She'd rather build with reality than burn everything down, hoping the smoke led somewhere new. Her voice didn't roar, but it landed hard. Cooper jumped in, giving AOC a moment, which she sees to escalate, not explain. She spun stories of Rosa in the Bronx, Deson, in Houston, personal tragedies designed to ignite, not inform the younger. Audience roared, some stood, tears appeared. AOC's words, a clarion call, a generational reckoning. But Bondi just wrote quietly, and that unbothered silence made everything sharper. AOC accused pragmatism of being paralysis, condemned the idea of waiting while lives paid the price. She stood, arms lifted, voice shaking with moral fury, calling for justice not just on carbon, but on every front. Chant of Green New Deal broke out. Cooper struggled to regain control. AOC soaked it in triumphant, while Bondi calmly closed her folder, took a breath that swallowed the room, and then with devastating calm began telling a different story, citing jail failures, inspector general reports on billions wasted on unregulated clean energy grants programs that overpromised and collapsed. She didn't look at AOC. She laid out facts like evidence, binding them into a quiet but crushing narrative. This wasn't about Rosa or Deson. This was about millions of workers not begging for TikToks, but for certainty. She dismantled the idea of justice as a trend. It was a contract. AOC was breaching the silence that followed. Felt like the end of a courtroom cross. When the truth hangs, they're exposed raw. Cooper pivoted, asking AOC to respond. To camera lingered on Bondi, pen poised, binder neatly closed, before finally shifting to AOC, whose expression had hardened. Her applause line suddenly brittle, because all the fire in the world couldn't burn through Bondi's receipts. For the first time that night, AOC didn't jump to speak. She leaned and narrowed her eyes, not the argument, but the woman delivering it, and the whole studio felt the shift. She wasn't about to rebut the facts. She was about to get personal, and the war everyone anticipated had only just begun. Pam Bondi stood there, steady, her expression calm, even as AOC's words grew sharper, more desperate, more wrapped in the energy of a crowd eager for a villain to hiss. AOC began with that clipped edge in her voice, no longer flowing with the grand poetry of policy, but laced with something darker, as she called ironic to take moral lectures from someone who once defended payday lenders that preyed on minority neighborhoods, now daring to speak about justice. Bondi did not blink. Her pen hovered above her notepad, as though AOC's accusation was just static in the air. AOC went on, this isn't a courtroom, is Bondi. She snapped, you don't get to hide behind your legal tricks while real people suffer. You spent your career protecting corporations, not communities around them. The crowd began to shift, leaning in with hungry faces, waiting for Bondi to fold, but she did not respond. Not yet. AOC pressed harder, claiming Bondi was only there because the administration needed a woman to sanitize the fossil fuel lobby, and warned her not to play the numbers game, because they all had the receipts. That was when Bondi finally looked up. It was the smallest motion, but somehow felt louder than AOC's entire tirade. She closed her notebook, folded her hands on the podium, and looked straight at AOC, not with disdain or condescension, but with a cold clinical interest. Then in a voice like chill glass, she asked, "Do you finish?" AOC's lip curled into a smirk, as if she had struck a nerve, but Bondi continued calmly. "Let's be clear, you came here with applause lines, hashtags, and headlines. I came with data. You're here to build a brand. I'm here to uphold the law, you say. I work with lenders. I prosecuted fraud, you say. I'm here to protect fossil fuel executives. I sued half of them." Her voice never rose, no tremor of indignation, only a slow dismantling of AOC's performance. Piece by piece you campaign on emotion, I argue the facts tonight. You're starting to confuse the difference of room when still AOC slammed her hand on the podium, pointing at Bondi, voice cracking under pressure. As she barked, "You've had your time, sit down, girl." The phrase hung there jagged, ugly. No one moved, not the moderators, not the audience it was. Instantly clear this wasn't about policy, it was personal. Raw, gendered humiliation meant to cut. Deep gasps rippled through the room. Even Anderson, Cooper twitched, knowing this moment would outlive the broadcast. But Bondi didn't flinch, didn't lash back, didn't ask for an apology. She simply tilted her head slightly, as if a truth had been confirmed before the world's eyes. With composure of someone who had stared down hostile judges and angry mobs, she reached into her briefcase, pulled out a thick file, and placed it on the podium. No theatrics, no explanation, just a silent message. You went loud. "I'll go deeper." Anderson tried to steer it back to policy. But Bondi cut to the awkward low. "If you want to silence women who speak with evidence, Congresswoman." She said, razor steady, "You might pick someone who hasn't been sworn in more times and you've gone viral." The room was shocked, not because it was a zinger, but because it was brutally effective. OC's face tightened, the power dynamic shifted hard. Bondi opened her folder, revealing pages of budget lines, audits, government memos lined up like ammo. Then she began with data cold precise, showing how federal programs tied to the Green New Deal had resulted in tens of thousands of lost jobs, wage collapses, families stranded. She spoke of a mother in Ohio, promised a solar certification, but forced to work a warehouse night shift for half the pay. She spoke of a union welder in Texas told to learn coding as his industry crumbled. Under new regs, these are not Republican talking points, she said. These are Labor Department audits. These are human consequences. AOC tried to pivot, but Bondi was relentless. She pointed out AOC's private jet trips to climate conferences, the way she tweeted about equity from 30,000 feet. While stylists waited on the tarmac, OC smirked. But her eyes betrayed it. Bondi pressed harder, referencing the time AOC code switched on stage mocked for it. By her own colleagues, Bondi leaned in you. Say you care about justice, but when a synagogue was desecrated, you're first. Response wasn't show up. It was a tweet you waited for the algorithm to pick a side. And when it didn't, you moved on the crowd. Tense, Bondi stepped forward, her record spilling out, not for show, but like Gurr.